Oral questions. I recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Art Healy lives in the Rose Villa long-term care facility. He has Alzheimer's disease. He recently wandered out of the facility in freezing cold weather without proper clothing. His Wander Band bracelet was working, but he was still outside in the cold for more than half an hour before he was discovered. Art's daughter, Millicent, has many concerns about the quality of care in Rose Villa and about serious flaws with the new facility. But her biggest concern, Mr. Speaker, is that a resident with dementia is going to freeze to death because there aren't enough workers to notice when a resident leaves the facility and is wandering around outside. She goes on to say in her letter, Mr. Speaker, quote, "I implore you to please address and correct this serious issue before someone simply walks out this winter and freezes to death."
Earlier this year, the Saskatchewan minister spent nearly $45,000 on an international trip focused on carbon capture. These travel bills just keep piling up. But what's not piling up is any transparency or accountability. This government is still refusing to table its 30-year analysis of the viability of its Boundary Dam carbon capture project. So, to the Saskatchewan minister, has the government not done that analysis, or is it just trying to keep that analysis hidden from Saskatchewan people? Even if it's a preliminary analysis, the Saskatchewan people deserve to see it. So, to the Saskatchewan minister, why won't he table that analysis today? What is it he doesn't want Saskatchewan people to see?
Lauren Rowell's daughter recently wrote to the Premier, quote, "On April 23, 2014, while a resident in a long-term care facility in Saskatoon, my father, Norman Lauren Rowell, was dropped on his head on a concrete floor from several feet up. Very painful complications from his injuries led to his death on May 16, 2014. Others are coming forward about the injuries and deaths their family members have experienced, which were caused by preventable incidents in long-term care facilities. I wonder if you truly know the extent of this problem." End quote. Lauren's daughter is here today because she wants the government to know the full extent of the problem, that there is a crisis in seniors' care that needs to be taken seriously.
We weren't happy with this government's decision to accept a store credit from the failed smart meter manufacturer. But the government repeatedly said that if things don't work out with census, we'll get all of our money back. Right. But in committee last night, SaskPower officials contradicted that. Right. They were clear that we won't get a single cent of that credit back if we choose to go with another manufacturer.
That government knowingly strapped dangerous meters to the homes of Saskatchewan people and have wasted their money. And now today, it's a great big joke. They should be ashamed of themselves. Let's get this straight. The Census 3.2 meters were fire-prone duds, but Census promised the government that the 3.3 versions would be so much better, and the government simply believed that. Census 3.3 meters turned out to be fire-prone duds, but Census promised the government that the next version would be so much better, and if only the government would give them $5 million and an $18 million store credit, and again, this government believed them. And contrary to everything that the Premier and Deputy Premier and the SaskPower Minister were saying, we know that we won't be getting that money back. To the Premier, why wasn't he just up front with Saskatchewan people? Why won't he put Saskatchewan people first?
We're joined today by a delegation from Craik and Central Butte and area, including Reeve Hilton Spencer, Mayor Rick Rogers, Dr. Eli Karam, and several others. They've traveled here today because they're upset with this government for scaling back healthcare services in Craik. The doctor is here today. Right. The mayor of Craik is here today. Right. The Reeve of the RM is here today, Mr. Speaker, because this Sask Party government wants to pull services out of Craik. Right. That's why they traveled to the legislature. When I spoke with them, Mr. Speaker, they said, we don't want anything that we haven't had before. What we want are the services that we've had in Craik for 100 years, Mr. Speaker. Here. And if this Premier wants to talk about things that happened when I was 13 years old, well, he can go down that path. But right now, Mr. Speaker, we have people from Craik who are upset about the health care in their community. My question to the Premier, will he have the courage to meet with them today right after question period?
We've heard many concerns throughout this session about care plans for residents in care facilities not being properly followed or updated. And now the provincial auditor is raising major concerns as well. In the auditor's review, every single resident they looked at was receiving one or more potentially inappropriate medications. 2/3 of the residents they looked at were receiving 3 or more potentially inappropriate medications. To the minister, when will this government get serious about delivering only safe and necessary medications to seniors in care facilities?
At the same time as the Premier has been cutting jobs in the public service, he's been ramping up spending on the use of expensive consultants. Since 2008, this government has increased spending on consultants to the tune of a whopping 228%. To the Premier, how can he possibly justify that? Hear, hear. This is absolutely outrageous. This government has increased the spending on contracts by 228%. They're not keeping track of why it's hiring consultants, it's not monitoring the consultants, and it's not even evaluating the consultants.
Many farmers and residents of rural Saskatchewan are still incredibly concerned about vast tracts of farmland being bought up by people or entities that are illegally using foreign money to buy that land. And major concerns have been raised about the special CPP deal that delivered huge benefits to 2 Sask Party insiders. A former and respected manager of the Farmland Security Board says that special deal was bizarre. To the minister, will he commit today to a fully independent review of the Saskatchewan Farm Security Act and the ability of the Farmland Security Board to effectively enforce its provisions?
The number of families who are coming forward with major concerns about the quality of seniors' care is overwhelming. The majority of them share their stories quietly because they're afraid of repercussions for their loved ones. But more and more are speaking publicly, like Margaret Frase's daughter. Margaret lives at Samaritan's Place, and her daughter has huge concerns about the poor quality of care because of short staffing. Margaret went 3 months without a bath. 3 months. My question is for the Premier. Does he agree that 3 months without a bath in a care facility is entirely unacceptable, no matter what?
You're here.
Debbie has many other very serious concerns about her mother's case. Her mother has been assaulted 4 times while in care facilities, resulting in broken bones, bruises, and a fractured spine. Her mother has been found wandering outside of the facility, and Debbie is very worried that she'll be hit by a car or that she will freeze to death. Debbie says a major part of the problem is short staffing. She sees it. Those on the front lines are concerned about bloated administration. Those on the front lines are concerned about more and more middle management and not those on the front lines. Saskatoon Health Region said they needed 450 care aides to get the level of care to where they wanted it to be. They only asked for 38, and all they got were 19, Mr. Speaker. That's this government's record in the throne speech. No new initiatives to address seniors' care.
We saw this week that the Sask Power Minister's story just keeps changing by the day, and pathetically, he keeps trying to hide behind the former president of Sask Power by quoting what the former president said. Well, yes, Mr. Speaker, what the former president said was correct. We either go with census or we don't get the $18 million back. It was actually the Premier and the Sask Power Minister that repeatedly said we'll get our money back no matter what. Yeah. To the Premier, why did he say that when it's not true?
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Provincial auditor yesterday, Mr. Speaker, said that the government has no evidence that lean is creating sustainable change or making health care better. And apparently, the government also doesn't know if it's actually saving any money, because the health minister, Mr. Speaker, refused to answer written questions about any financial savings achieved through lean. Either he doesn't know the answer, Mr. Speaker, or he doesn't want Saskatchewan people to know the answer, and either way, that is completely unacceptable. We also requested this information directly from the health regions. The entire Prince Albert Parkland Health Region reports that they have saved $131.26 because of lean. And they specifically say that they have not realized any other financial savings from lean. My question, Mr. Speaker, is to the Premier. Is he ready to admit that the John Black version of lean is clearly not working? Hear, hear. Fern Chingoose was just 65 years old when she died prematurely in Parkridge Centre on April 6th of last year. Fern's family has many concerns about the quality of care, about the effects of short staffing, about residents not receiving the help that they need. But their biggest concern is with Fern's premature death. Fern had a severe allergy to ciprofloxacin, which was specifically noted on her allergy sheet in her care plan. But on April 6th of last year, she was given that medication and she died as a result. Fern Chingus was just 65 years old. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And it should have been a wake-up call to this government to make some major changes. But this government has not learned those lessons. Just last week, the provincial auditor said that care facilities are still putting seniors at risk by not updating and following medication plans. And we keep hearing stories about inadequate staffing. Her family wants to know how many others will have to die prematurely before we see real change in our seniors' care system. My question for the Premier, what is his answer to their question? Margaret Warholm, Jessie Selwood, Lauren Rowell, and now Fern Chingus. Those are the people we've heard about this session who died prematurely in care facilities. And it's been heartbreaking to hear these stories and to speak with these families. And it's been heartbreaking to hear the stories of Emily Krushelnicki, Art Healy, and Margaret Fraze. And it's been heartbreaking to speak with many families who call with concerns but choose not to go public. My question is for the Premier. Has he heard enough yet to recognize that we desperately need better staffing, regulated minimum care standards, and real accountability for when those standards are not followed?
It's so frustrating, Mr. Speaker, that this government keeps trying to minimize the crisis in seniors' care while it keeps pouring so much money into John Black and its lean pet project. The vast majority of doctors, nurses and frontline healthcare workers can't stand John Black's version of lean. And senior health administrators have major problems with John Black. They say he lacks respect, tattles on leaders if they question, gossips and undermines. And they say the only reason the government is keeping John Black around is they think the optics would be bad if they walked away. And last week, the provincial auditor said that John Black has way too much control and that things will improve once he's gone. So again, to the Premier, in the face of all that damning evidence, why won't he fire John Black?